5 years ago, I reacted to a More Plates, More Dates video about Logan Paul's hair, and today I'll be updating that analysis. Has Logan had a hair transplant? Let's take a look. A good place to start is to take a look at Logan's family members. First, let's take his dad, who has a very advanced form of male pattern hair loss. His dad has nearly a Norwood 7 pattern. That means that he's lost most of the hair in the DHT sensitive area. When we look at Logan's brother Jake, even at age 21, he already had frontotemporal recession that was putting him closer to a Norwood 3 type of pattern. Now let's take a look at Logan. In 2014, at the age of 19, what I'm seeing here is that Logan has a curved forehead. So we all have some curvature to our foreheads, but the more curved it is and the lower that curvature starts, it gives the illusion of a higher hairline. So if you were to take a measurement of his forehead, it might appear in proportion to the rest of his face, but because of that curvature, it does give it the illusion of a higher hairline. And remember that the size of one's forehead is not just defined by the vertical dimension. We also have to take into consideration the diagonal distance into the frontotemporal corner, as well as the overall horizontal width of the forehead. And the temples located here out laterally help shorten that horizontal distance. Logan does appear to have some lateral recession of his temples. In 2015, at the age of 20, we see here that Logan is starting to wear his hair down, and that helps mask the size of the forehead. The other thing that it does is that it brings more attention to other more prominent features of his face, specifically his strong bony brow ridge and mandible. In 2016, at the age of 21, what I'd like to point out here is that when you look at Logan's eyebrows, laterally they appear a bit thinner, and this is a very common variant in men. Sometimes it happens as we get older and just with the aging process, but sometimes even in youth, the lateral portion of the brow, which is the tail of the brow, can be a bit thinner in men. And we have a good view of Logan's temple in this picture here, and you can see that there's still some slight anterior peak to his temple, but also clear temporal recession can be seen. In 2017, at the age of 22, what we see here is that the central zone, which is the DHT sensitive area, is overall thinner, especially when you compare it to Logan's lateral hump area and the parietal hair. And you can see that his central hairline has actually receded to be at a higher level than the frontotemporal corners on the sides, which is definitely one variant of androgenetic male pattern hair loss that I see in my practice. And his hair is again styled in a way to reduce his forehead visibility. In 2018, at the age of 23, while I don't see any obvious changes to Logan's hair here yet, keep in mind that the Impulsive podcast actually launched in November of 2018. Remember, this was going to be a time that he was going to be even more visible and on camera and potentially more exposed with his look, and people aren't always the friendliest online, and it's possible that that had something to do with what I'm about to show you, but there's no clear evidence that anything happened specifically to his hair. This is all speculation, but again, just something I wanted to point out about the launch of that podcast. And in 2019, now at the age of 24, we see that Logan's hair is clearly thicker. Now, could this be just related to some hair medications that he started? It's possible. There are, of course, certain key medications that we think of when we try to prevent further hair loss in men and when we try to improve the overall thickness of the hair. And it's not just medications, there are other things out there. We've talked in the past extensively on this channel about things like PRP, with or without exosomes, low-level laser light, microneedling. But as far as the tried and true and first-line medical therapy, I think of finasteride as being the number one agent for reducing further hair loss in men. There's also the stronger version of it, which is dutasteride, and that one we covered in a recent video about pros and cons and differences and similarities of dutasteride compared to finasteride. And then on the more kind of thickening one's hair side, we have minoxidil, and the strongest version of it that's out there is the pill form compared to the topical. The topical is not going to be as impressive in the clinical outcomes. The pill form seems to have much more robust improvements in thickening one's hair, but of course there are going to be potential side effects, and we've talked about that again extensively on on this channel, we have some dedicated videos on oral minoxidil if you want to learn more about those medications. But it's also possible that Logan may have had a hair transplant around this time. We don't have an extended documented period where Logan was fully, shaved down to a 0 for a potential transplant. So the question is, was this done, if it was done with FUE or FUT? The truth is, with both methods, you can do no shave approaches. So classically with FUT, which is that strip method where a strip is removed from the back, guys generally did not shave for that procedure. That was one of the advantages that was promoted at the time when FUT was the most popular and most common form of hair transplant surgery, specifically for the harvesting method. And so at that time, you kept the hair long in the back, and then usually the doctor and the team would work around long hair to improve the situation of one's hair with a transplant. Then when FUE became the dominant modality at around maybe 2015, 2016, it started to really take off, and over the last 10 years approximately, it's been the more dominant and the more popular method of harvesting hair for a transplant. So with FUE, it became very routine to just shave down a guy's head for a transplant, right? That's what we often see online, and and then miraculously they appear with a lot more hair. But there are ways to still do FUE surgery without shaving one's head. You can actually do a harvest with a no shave. It's a more difficult way to do it, but it is something that, at least in my practice, we offer for a smaller number of grafts in a session, usually about 1,600, because it takes a lot longer than shaving down one's head for the harvest, but it can be done with most hair types. And then you can do the recipient area, which is like potentially in Logan's case, the frontal scalp here. You can do that without shaving. It's just that sometimes it's a much more difficult way to perform the procedure. And so a lot of clinics, a lot of surgeons just don't offer it that way, but it can be done. And oftentimes we find ourselves doing that because people want a, reduced downtime. They want to be able to head back to work. They don't want people knowing that they had something done. So is it easier to do the transplant with a shaved head? I think yes, but can it be done with long hair? The answer is often yes as well. And in 2020, at the age of 25, this view from the back of Logan's head suggests that his crown is still very much intact. We don't see any obvious signs of an FUE or an FUT harvest because his hair is kept long, so it's just impossible to really tell at this length of hair. But what we do see, though, is that when he has his headphones in for one of these episodes of Impulsive, and there was a brief period at the beginning of one of these episodes where he pulls his hair back, and we're now seeing his hairline. This architecture does appear to be different from his original. Logan's forelock now appears to be stronger than it was before. And remember how I said earlier that his hairline naturally was receding in a way that the central hairline was pulling up to be higher than the surrounding hair. Now we see that there's been some restoration from what I can tell, and that central hairline is now his lowest part of the hairline, which is a more aesthetically favorable type of position. We also see that for that frontal inch of the hairline, there's a reduced density there. So it ends up looking like, in some ways, more natural because there isn't like a wall of hair right at the front. But that transition zone, the way we like to think of it, from those single hair grafts to the larger groupings of hair, is fairly wide, wider than we sometimes make it. So it does appear like there are just kind of scattered hairs throughout that frontal zone. And that sometimes is the result of a transplant where not enough density is placed into that frontal inch of hair. You definitely want to keep that frontal few millimeters a little bit lighter, a bit more scattered, finer hairs, but then you want to start to fill in with more density, or you start to have a thinner appearance at the frontal hairline. But again, with the way that Logan wears his hair, specifically kind of combed down, it's impossible to really see the hairline in most configurations. It's only if he pulls it back like this and you're standing there, and overall, this is not work that people I think would quickly detect as a transplant, but there are some transplant results that can mimic this type of appearance. And if Logan did have a hair transplant, I don't think they only worked into that frontal inch of hairline. I think they most likely reinforced most of the frontal scalp. That would provide him with more density, especially when he's combing his hair down, because it gives that visibility of just thicker hair. So, all that to say that we don't know whether or not this is a transplant result, but I think it's good to take a look and observe, and everyone can come to their own conclusions. In 2021, at the age of 26, I see no change. So in 2022, at the age of 27, Logan again is sporting a similar hairstyle, with the hair being combed down over the forehead. And in 2023, at the age of 28, I see no change. I've seen a lot of chatter online about Prime energy drink, and the question is, is it a safe drink? Honestly, I have no idea. But what I do know is that when it comes to Feel Confident hair care products, we've put in the highest quality of ingredients to make sure that we have products that actually deliver impact to one's hair, and we've kept out harmful chemicals that can hurt one's hair. Oh, and we won the 2025 GQ Award and Men's Health Award for Best in Class Thickening Shampoo and Conditioner. I'm super proud about that, and so go check out our hair care products for, again, the best thickening shampoo, conditioner, and thickening foam, and soon a scalp serum. And keep an eye out for our fresh redesigned packaging dropping later this year. In 2024, at the age of 29, I see no change. And in 2025, at the age of 30, Logan was on Aiden Ross's live stream. And during that live stream, he actually showed his hairline, which is a rare occurrence. And it appears to have those same characteristics that we saw first debuted in 2020. Take a look at this clip.
Show your hairline.
My front is fine.
Show your hairline. God damn, Logan. Wait, hold on, Mike.
Wait, I can't even. How do you do it?
Yeah, yeah. Logan, you're just not that bad.
No, mine's fine in the front. It's just the back.
I probably hit the turkey at some point.
Well,
I'll go with you.
I have to take my hat off and praise Turkey on what an incredible job they've done with marketing hair transplant surgery. Over the past maybe 5 to 7 years, they've poured a lot of funding and resources into showing off a lot of different results and talking up a lot of different methods for hair restoration and offering, really enticing packages to people to go there for surgery. And as much as some people think that somehow I'm in competition with Turkey, truth is I am not. And if anything, I have a lot to thank them for, in the sense that it's very difficult for clinics and surgeons to do well in the States, because they're essentially price-wise having to at least consider the pricing of places like Turkey. And a lot of times that ends up being a scenario where they're not able to keep up with those low prices, and they honestly go out of business because people are not dumb. They'll see if they can get a better deal somewhere else, they'll go somewhere else. But at the end of the day, the people who come to me care a lot about quality, and they care about their safety, and they want the best possible outcome, even if that means paying a bit more. So I think, if anything, it's been good for my practice. But I'll also say this. It's not about choosing a specific country, and I've said this in many videos, but I think it's worth repeating. And this goes for any plastic surgery, not just hair restoration, but it's about choosing a surgeon, a specific individual who's going to care for you and will try to bring your vision to light, to reality, right? And to do so safely and to take good care and really, kind of watch out for you and assemble a team that will help him or her achieve your goals. So that's really what it's about. So if you found that in Turkey, if you found that, in whatever country, that's great. But don't be enticed by any specific deal, offer, or, you heard that a country is specifically known for something. It's not about the country. It's about the doctor who's actually responsible for your care. So know who you're seeing. Don't just, trust reviews or, online forums that can be very misleading. Do your research, figure out who that person is, what they stand for. And at some point you have to take the leap and decide who you can trust with your health and your appearance. So in summary, I believe that Logan Paul may have had a hair transplant somewhere around 2018 or 2019. My guess is that it was done using the FUT form of harvesting. Because of that no shave approach, and because FUE with no shave was not that popular back then, and it still isn't that popular today. And I think the grafts were moved to the frontal scalp and to his hairline. And in terms of the graft count, it may have ranged anywhere from, let's say, 1,600 to 2,500 grafts. Do you agree with this analysis, or do you have a different take on Logan Paul's hair journey over the years? Leave a comment below and let me know which celebrity I should cover next. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel, and if you're interested in content like this, you might also enjoy KSI's hairline analysis that I did a few years back.